Hey everybody, welcome to the briefing room. I'm Devin Dwyer. Happy Thursday to you. Great to have John Santucci, our senior investigative reporter, with us today. A very big day on the Russia investigation, the special counsel probe into President Trump's inner circle. A number of cases. We've talked, John, about how 6 of President Trump's closest colleagues, associates, have been indicted by the special counsel, pleaded guilty. One of those is his former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort. Paul Manafort, if you have forgotten, has been indicted in 2 different cases, and one pled guilty. He is going to be sentenced this afternoon. He's back in federal court for the sentencing in one of the 2 cases. Right. John, this is the case involving the financial crimes, unrelated to the campaign, unrelated to President Trump, but very serious matters. He could spend the rest of his life behind bars. Yeah, I mean, many are saying that he'll get upwards of 2 decades in jail, and that's only in this one case. This is the Eastern District of Virginia case. This is the first one that actually did go to trial for special counsel Robert Mueller. So we're going to learn very shortly what happens to him. He's obviously been spending time in jars, behind bars, since a judge accused him of witness tampering late last summer. He's already in jail, and what's your over-under on how long he could be sentenced
I mean, the guidance that we've gotten is somewhere that could be around 25 years.
Just in this case?
Just in this case.
Wow.
And remember, he has a second sentencing, Devin, next week for the charges he faces in the District of Columbia case. That's also a federal case. But like we said, he's been in jail for quite some time. Our Catherine Falders, who has been in the courtroom for us for the last several months, has reported that she has seen a physical change in Paul Manafort. He's been in a wheelchair at some times when he comes into jail. He has aged quite significantly. Remember, this is a man that's going to be 70 years old next month. So not too easy being in jail. Quite a player in this town for decades, someone who had advised presidents, Republican presidents, going back years. Gerald Ford. And now behind bars for some pretty serious crimes, and just, as we've been saying, 1 case out of 2. And John, he is appealing this, we should say, even though he was found guilty, pleaded guilty. And cooperated for a period of time with the special counsel until they realized that the cooperation was no too good. And we'll have to keep an eye on the pardons game as well. We know that he has maybe perhaps hoped for a pardon from President Trump, who's spoken favorably, but it's not clear. So much more to come on that. We'll talk about pardons with Michael Cohen as well coming up shortly. But also want to start today going to Capitol Hill, where House Democrats are beginning their afternoon here, taking a look at a resolution condemning bigotry, anti-Semitism, and hate in all of its forms. A sort of unusual act that you would think your members of Congress would have to take, but this is a fallout from some controversial comments made by Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, specifically related to Judaism. John, this is something, not the first time she's been in hot water. She's a freshman Congresswoman, one of the first 2 women Muslim Congresswomen on Capitol Hill. And this has set off quite a delicate dance for the Democratic Party. Yeah, and really hard also for Speaker Nancy Pelosi, because this is a congresswoman that represents this new emerging, growing base of the new Democratic Party. So what do they do about this? We're going to see what happens in this floor vote here. But, you know, many are saying, how do they not come out and condemn what she has done? We know the congresswoman has been quite definitive and is not backing down. She doesn't believe that there is anything to apologize for. Remember, she came out and attacked AIPAC. So really going to see where this develops over the next little bit. And one of the critics of Congresswoman Omar, and a colleague, fellow Democrat of her, joins us now live from Capitol Hill, Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida. It's great to see you, Congresswoman. Thank you so much for being here. I know you've been involved in drafting the resolution. I want to put up some of the text. Some pretty strong language condemning bigotry in all of its forms, white supremacy, anti-Islamophobia, all of the like in there, particularly anti-Semitism. Where do you fall on whether the Congresswoman's name should be included? We don't see her in this resolution, her name.
Where I fall is as a member of the Democratic caucus, a proud member of the Democratic caucus that is going to be proud to speak for and cast my vote in support of this resolution that was crafted by members of our party who do understand that we have to fight hatred and bigotry, anti-Semitism, racism in all its forms, and that using the platform of the floor of the House of Representatives to do that is absolutely essential. We've not seen that same enthusiasm, shall we say, from the other side of the aisle, particularly when it's come from the occupants of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And so ensuring that we can use this as an education moment so that people can understand what exactly anti-Semitism and Islamophobia mean, and that they're not just tossed as words around that have no meaning. Words have power, and this resolution gives meaning to those words.
Are you surprised this is something that you even have to do as a Democratic majority?
I'm surprised that in the 21st century, in 2019, that we have to spell out what is unacceptable in terms of hatred. Yes, I am surprised, but I have to tell you that there has been I'm surprised but proud that we are taking this moment as a Democratic majority and doing so immediately, not hemming and hawing, not sweeping it under the rug, not doing a lot of hand-wringing over it, but being deliberative and making sure that we spell out what it means and the kind of pain it causes, which has not been done by the Republicans when it comes to the President of the United States and all the Islamophobia and anti-Semitism and bigotry that he has engaged in since he's taken office and even since he began running.
The comment from Congresswoman Omar that sort of prompted this move for resolution was one where she was comparing supporters of Israel to showing allegiance to a foreign power, perhaps at the expense of allegiance to the United States. It's one that she has pushed back on. I want to show folks the tweet. She says that she has her views, is entitled to her views. Certainly is something she says she shouldn't be expected to have allegiance, pledge support to a foreign country. Today, Speaker Pelosi said she didn't believe that Congresswoman Omar intended to be anti-Semitic in that way. Congresswoman, do you think there's a place in Congress for critics of Israel?
What I think there's a place in Congress for is making sure that we use the representative body that is the U.S. House of Representatives to foster understanding and tolerance. And that's what this resolution is designed to do. It's important that we make sure that throughout our history, as we have seen all the way back to Japanese Americans during World War II, out of fear of the Japanese, they were rounded up and imprisoned against their will. Because their loyalty was questioned to this country. The same happened when John F. Kennedy ran for president, and he's an Irish Catholic, and whether he could be loyal to the United States and was or was not loyal to the Vatican or even to Ireland was questioned. And so Jews have experienced that throughout our thousands of years of history, as if we are somehow a stateless people that have more loyalty to Israel or to one another than we do to our countries of origin. And so making sure that we continue and constantly use these moments to educate people about the pain of anti-Semitism and bigotry is absolutely critical, and that's what this is designed to do.
A big vote upcoming this afternoon on that resolution. Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida, it's great to hear your perspective. Great to have you here. Thanks so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it very much. And moving on, John, you know, off Capitol Hill, a lot of attention on President Trump's former inner circle now beginning to speak out overnight. If you haven't been paying attention, we heard for the first time from former Chief of Staff John Kelly, the general, who was sort of stabilized the ship in the West Wing, if you will, when he came in after Reince Priebus. Then he left after so much controversy. The president soured on him. He was at Duke University overnight. What struck you from this first speaking out?
Oh, I think telling Mick Mulvaney to run for it, among everything else, the man who succeeded him in his position. I mean, look, there's so much that we want to know about John Kelly, right? He is the longest surviving chief of staff in this young Trump administration, which isn't saying a lot considering how long some people have lasted. But look, the fact that he said if Hillary Clinton was president, he would have got up and served. He really believes in duty to country. But I do just think the fact that he would not go anywhere near questions about Jared Kushner's security clearance after that New York Times memo saying that he wrote it. He was
allegedly central to getting clearance for the president's two closest advisors, his son-in-law, his daughter, Ivanka Trump. That was largely at the behest of John Kelly. Interesting. We'll have to wait to see until he writes his tell-all book, perhaps. We'll see.
But it's still the fact that you know most former administration officials, to your point, emerge with a book, emerge with a big sit-down interview or something like that. It's really stunning to think right now where we are that John Kelly instead is out just giving lectures, giving talks. No video allowed from this, only audio from folks in the room. It's really a different tactic we're seeing.
But very significant nonetheless. Our White House reporter Jordan Phelps has been over there trying to gauge reaction in the West Wing today to what John Kelly said overnight. Jordan, what have you been hearing over there from folks to what John Kelly has had to say?
Yeah, Devin, it was fascinating to hear from Kelly. And as John said, this is a different tack. We're not seeing him, going out and writing a book, but we are very much seeing him really trying to shape the narrative, right, of his time at the White House, really striking a diplomatic tone, but also exposing some daylight between him and the president, saying that basically he disagreed on some of the most controversial policies that we've seen come through this White House on his watch, specifically, Devin, on that very controversial zero tolerance policy that resulted in the separation of migrant families. Kelly placed full blame on the shoulders of former Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Take a listen.
The big separation of families thing that happened was a decision made by the Attorney General. It was his decision to make. And it kind of surprised us. It certainly caught DHS flat-footed and HHS, Health and Human Services, flat-footed. So that's if the families come as a unit. And I won't get into why they come as a unit and how they're trafficked and everything, but it's a way to, very shortly, it's a way to get around our laws.
So, Devin, you hear Kelly there saying he was caught flat-footed, but this is being roundly criticized by a lot of people as an attempt at revisionist history on Kelly's part. As you'll remember, Devin, he was one of the administration's vocal defenders of that policy at the time and said it was a tough deterrent to illegal immigration.
Yeah, it was sort of that was a shocker, John, to hear the separation of families, which of course was in the spotlight yesterday with Secretary Nielsen, his sidekick on Capitol Hill, taking all the heat for it.
Not even sidekick though, protege. This is the woman who he handpicked to succeed him as Secretary of Homeland Security. Was for a brief period of time his number 2 at the department, and then number 2 at the White House until she ultimately went and filled his old job.
To suggest, as Jordan was saying, that he didn't have anything to do with this, didn't think it was a good idea, flies in the face of fact, which he said publicly at the time, and we know that he was one of the most hawkish on immigration in that West Wing.
Yeah,
really pushed this hardline
one of the people, along with Stephen Miller and other close advisors to the president, that were right there defending him on the front lines. One of the few times we actually saw Kelly out there talking about this was one of those 2 press conferences he did behind the White House podium.
Yeah,
so,
and Jordan, it does seem that there's a little bit of revisionism going on here, as you said earlier, where John Kelly, as many former members of the administration have done, they leave, they sort of separate themselves from some of the controversial policies, but then try to recraft their image. It does seem here, given his comments about perhaps having worked for President Clinton, if she had won the election, sort of he's trying to suggest, it does seem that he's sort of a nonpartisan figure.
Yeah, Devin, it's very clear here that Kelly wants to be remembered as a public servant. He doesn't want to be remembered as some sort of political hack, a political appointee. And that was really the point he was making, Devin, when he said that he would have been happy to serve for President Clinton had she been the one who had won instead of President Trump. So he didn't criticize Trump directly, but really separating himself from Trump in the process.
Yeah, Jordan, thanks for that. Stand by. Speaking of former members of Trump's inner circle, some new headlines today.
Sorry, there's just a lot today.
There's a lot going on involving President Trump's former personal attorney, Michael Cohen. Obviously been in the news a lot. He was on Capitol Hill for 3 full days testifying about President Trump, is going to jail for lying to Congress, among other crimes. And now there's this finger-pointing, John, over potential of a pardon for Michael Cohen. His lawyer, Lanny Davis, says that at one point he had reached out about the possibility of getting a pardon. The White House legal team says, wait a second, we didn't, reach out to him. We didn't engage on this. So there's a bit of a back and forth there. But the potential liability for Michael Cohen could be his testimony to Congress, which I think we have, where he denied having any awareness of a pardon. Take a listen.
And I have never asked for, nor would I accept, a pardon from President Trump.
There's 2 streams of reporting from ABC News. So first, Lanny Davis, as you mentioned, is on the record saying now that early on in the process, while Cohen was still part of the joint defense agreement with all the other team members that have been involved in the special counsel's lawsuit, that there was a reach out at his request to the Trump legal team to discuss a pardon. Now, the Trump legal team, as you said, completely rejects that, said they did not engage in any conversations about pardons, said and done, move over. Second piece of reporting from our team here that we actually broke first yesterday, is that after Cohen left the joint defense agreement with the Trump legal team, apparently, according to our sources, there was a contact by attorneys close to Rudy Giuliani to keep Cohen in the tent. So we're told. Keep him talking, keep a line of communication. Could that have maybe led to a pardon? Maybe, don't know, not clear.
So two
but still,
very different
timelines. Yeah.
And two different sets of players.
Right.
But just this idea that
pardons were
possibility
discussed
of a pardon
potentially,
was
yes.
discussed in some way. Who initiated, perhaps, is still going to be in dispute.
Absolutely.
But that's very interesting. And meanwhile, to button all of this up.
Yeah, we got a third one.
I mean, my gosh, Michael Cohen now on the way to prison, which he is.
Yep, 2 months to go.
Very soon. Is suing the Trump organization.
Yeah, this is a doozy of a lawsuit. So Michael Cohen is saying that he had a deal with the Trump organization that they would take care of his legal fees. Now, not Donald Trump paying Michael Cohen for services rendered. Rather, Michael Cohen going out and having to hire attorneys to deal with the special counsel, the Southern District of New York,
there was
all
an
of the
agreement.
congressional. That's what he claims. Now, we spoke to sources close to the Trump organization. They say no such deal existed whatsoever. We asked folks up there what they thought of this. One source told me they thought this was, quote, laughable, and they felt Michael Cohen's GoFundMe fund might have not worked out too well.
Wow. And Jordan Phelps, again, you're talking to folks over there and your sources in the West Wing. From my read of it, they don't seem particularly bothered by Michael Cohen, especially now because of this pardons controversy. It's almost like a gift, a blow to his credibility, a gift to the White House. They don't seem bothered by what he's been saying the past few weeks. Is that true?
Yeah, Devin, the White House is all too happy to point outside the walls of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue when it comes to Michael Cohen and point to outside counsel. But President Trump is clearly irritated about this. Devin, he got a question about Michael Cohen in the Oval Office today, and he only responded with a very loud thank you, which is President Trump's signal for I'm not answering that question. We've also seen the president angrily tweet about that Michael Cohen hearing happening as he was having this summit with Kim Jong-un, suggesting that that might have been part of the reason for the walk of that, which is, of course, interesting in and of itself, considering that the president has tried to cast that summit as a success.
And what will be interesting here to see is if Congress does anything for what Cohen said to them. I mean, could they take action on him? That tongue lashing he got from Elijah Cummings last week saying, I warned him, do not lie to me. Could this now be something they go after?
He said he never asked for, had any discussion about a pardon, and yet now we have this admission from his team and from others that there was a discussion.
Yeah,
so
it'll be
we'll
interesting to see where this goes.
John Santucci, great
Nice
to have
to
you.
see you.
Much more reporting at abcnews.com. Jordan Phelps, appreciate you as well over at the White House. Much more from you, I'm sure, as this day continues to unfold. Meanwhile, back to Capitol Hill, where if you weren't paying much attention last month, something big happened, something extraordinary that doesn't happen all that often these days. Congress passed a sweeping environmental conservation law with a bipartisan majority. Take a look at what it does. It even has the support of President Trump, designates over 1 million acres of wilderness, protects several thousand acres from mining, expands the number of national parks in this country, even creates 4 new national monuments. And get this, the Congressional Budget Office even says this bill would save taxpayers $9 million over a decade. Pretty big deal. A little while ago, we were joined here in the briefing room by 2 of the champions of this legislation, a political odd couple, Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska and Democratic Congressman Raul Grijalva of Arizona. They told us what this new bill means. Take a listen. This is something that's far from the Green New Deal many in your party have been talking about, but you've called this something of an old school Green Deal. Tell us about that.
That is, as you pointed out, the acreage and the new set-aside areas, the permanent reauthorization of the Land and Water Conservation Fund. While I called it an old school deal, is the fact that this is legislating, and this is what we come here to do. Many of these pieces of legislation that are part of the whole package have been around for 10 years, and through the leadership of the good senator and the participation of all, we found common ground, we compromised, and we have a bipartisan package that passed overwhelmingly in the House and in the Senate.
And we can't underscore enough how sweeping this bill is, and it did pass the Senate, as you said, 98-2, which is no small thing these days. Senator Murkowski, I wanted to ask you what the secret was to achieving so much land conservation here at a time when this administration in particular particular has been focused on rolling back protection of public lands.
So it was bipartisan, bicameral. It was good old-fashioned legislating that brought in not only those who are focused on the conservation side, but those who are focused on just efficiencies with land management, economic benefit to communities, help for our sportsmen and women around the country while we deal with water and land issues.
You've been very outspoken about the need to protect the environment, talked about the impacts of climate change, talked about the need to do something. Also, though, supporting the fossil fuel industries, a big deal in your state, of course.
Yes.
How do you bridge the gap, Senator Murkowski, between preserving, advocating, addressing climate change, and also supporting that industry? Where is there common ground? How can you find compromise with Democrats on that?
Well, one of the things that you have pointed out, there are areas of withdrawal within this measure, some wilderness creation, but keep in mind, we did this the right way. We did this through the legislative process that gained the support of the lawmakers from the respective states, working, whether they were their governors, state legislators, senators, or congressmen here. That is how you bring about these designations, is through that consensus process where it comes literally from the ground up.
You have proven with this legislation you can work together to get it done. I want to ask you about next steps, what you could do going forward, and specifically want to ask you both about the topic that's in the news so much right now, the Green New Deal. Congressman Grijalva, that's something you support, calls for eliminating fossil fuels, among other things. We'll remind people here on the screen what some of the provisions are. Is it realistic? Do you think that this is a package, a resolution, an idea that you can begin as a launch point for with Republicans?
Let me tell you how I see that resolution, and not necessarily the manifesto that was attached to it, because that's not what we voted on. We voted on a resolution for the Green New Deal, and that New Deal basically is it's the aspiration, it's the goal, and I think that each committee in the House is now going to be responsible for filling in the blanks.
All right, our thanks to Congressman Grijalva of Arizona and Senator Murkowski of Alaska weighing in there on the Green New Deal, something they say seem to suggest could not potentially be a launch point for bipartisan compromise, but celebrating a big one nonetheless with that land conservation bill. You can check out more on that at abcnews.com. We'll keep an eye on the Manafort sentencing over in the District of Virginia. The president's former campaign chairman headed to prison for quite a long time, we expect later today. Stay here with us at ABC News Live for updates on that front. Hope you'll be back here tomorrow, 3:30 Eastern Time in the briefing room. I'm Devin Dwyer in Washington. We'll see you then.